Hi guys, so I was looking through the WCA database and I noticed an interesting fact. So in this graph here, I'm graphing the 3x3 and 4x4 world record averages over time. So on the x-axis you can see we have January 1st, 2005, 2010, 2015, 2020, and 2025. The 3x3 average is in blue and the 4x4 average, which is a slower event, is in red. It's about a 4 to 1 ratio, right? And you can see, like, for example, in 2005, the blue line is at 14.52 because that was Shotaro Makisumi's average world record at the time. So anyway, I want to look at two different timestamps, early 2019 and early 2025, and I want to see how these two events dropped in that time frame. So in early 2019, the 3x3 average was 5.80 seconds, which was Felix Zemdeg's this record right here. Now, it was set in October 2017, a whole year earlier, but nobody broke that record for a long time until I think November 2019. So as of January 2019, that was still the standing record. As you can see, it was like holding for this long. And then as for 4x4, the world record on January 1st, 2019, my phone just notified me of something. Anyway, the world record at that time was 21.13 seconds, set by Max Park in this video. And I was actually there, I think. See, there I am. Oh my god, that's me. Okay, that's crazy. Anyway, this was set in summer 2018, so congrats to Max for that. And that wasn't broken until the next year also. So that was the standing record on January 1st, 2019. Okay, so that was the then. What about now? Or not now, but early 2025. So we're talking January, just 5 months ago. Well, let's look at 4x4 first. So we went from 21.13 down to, well, it was 19.38. So that's also Max Park. He just is really good at big cubes. Set about 2 years ago, but it didn't get broken for a long time. And, he got 19.38. I know Timon Kolosinski broke that in February of this year with a 19.17, but this is early 2025. So as of then, it was still 19.38. As for 3x3, we know that by this point, Yi Heng Wang and all the Chinese cubers took over. So we went from 5.80 down to 4.05 for early 2025. And this was the record, 4.05, December 2024. Obviously, by now, Yi Heng Wang got the sub 4 average, the 3.91, but 4.05 was the record as of the start of 2019. So those are the 4 times you need to keep track of. And I'm going to ask, how much did each event drop in that time frame? Well, let's take a look. So 3x3 went from 5.8. Okay, well, let's look at 4x4 first. 21.13 to 19.38. That's a 1.75 second drop. And 3x3 went from 5.80 to 4.05. Also, exactly a 1.75 second drop. The two events dropped by exactly the same amount in those 6 years. Now you might be like, well, that makes sense. Everyone's trying to improve both events. It's an equally sized community. But 4x4 is a 4 times slower event than 3x3. If they were proportional, you would expect 4x4 to have a 4 times as large drop, right? And if you look at it percentage-wise, it keeps moving my thing around. 4x4 only dropped by 8.2% in those 6 years, whereas 3x3 dropped by over 30%. So, that's just crazy. And I think if you were to think about like why this is happening, I really feel like this kind of the post-COVID era, we saw all these like really young kids just totally sweep 3x3 and take it to a level that people just couldn't have even imagined in 2019. But we haven't really seen that happen for 4x4. I feel like the people who are dominating 4x4 now were known in 2019, and it's not like they ushered in this new wave. So that's why 4x4 dropped less than 3x3. I guess it's just like those Chinese gurus and coaches just aren't really focusing on big cubes as much, or maybe big cubes are harder for kids to learn for some reason. So anyway, another way to look at the same fact is to look at the ratio. So it's asking how many times slower is the 4x4 average than the 3x3 average. And when I started cubing in 2013, so that's around here, it says 3.87. In my head, it was always 4. Like, you look at any cuber of generally any speed, and their 4x4 time is typically around 4 times slower than their 3x3 time. Whether they were Felix, averaging 7 and 28, or if they were like a beginner and it was like 30 seconds and 2 minutes. It was always around 4, which I think was like, very clean and easy to remember. And you can see like there's some interesting trends. Like it was hovering around 5 in the mid 2000s, and it kind of goes down, which I think is because like obviously early on 3x3 was like the main event, the only event. Like it was the only one sponsored in the 1982 World Championships. So the quote unquote newer events like 4x4, it took longer for people to kind of like learn the methods, get comfortable with it, and like feel like got to an expert level. So that's what I think why it took a while for 4x4. Also, like I did put this little marker. I think Yao for 4x4 as a method took off. I mean, I know it was invented around like 2009 by like Eric Eckerslike and Robert Yao, of course. But I know that Sebastian Weyer got those world records around 2012, like the 30-second world record average. That was a 3-second drop. So I think really when you see this big drop in time, that's because Yao is like really improving 4x4's times, and obviously that doesn't really affect 3x3 times. So you see that like big drop from about 34 seconds to like the very next year 29, whereas 3x3 it was very much still in the mid sevens that whole time. So that's why there's that drop. And then this big jump up is because, Felix got a 6.53 average. And I remember when that happened, I was already a cuber, and that was like unprecedented. Like people thought there was going to be like a low 7 average, but definitely not a mid 6. So that's kind of why there's an anomaly there. So you can kind of ignore that. If you ignore this little peak, it's kind of just like this U shape. So I think it really bottomed out, in kind of, around early 2019. I think there's like this drop here in 2018 that I feel like is not because of Yao, because Yao's thing was here, and there's no 3x3 drop to accompany it. I think that's like Max Park and Sebastian doing stuff. But anyway, that's not really important. The really important thing that like this whole video is about is this trend upwards since 2019, which corresponds to 3x3 having these huge drops and 4x4 kind of stabilizing. So we're kind of moving up to almost 5. The ratio right now is 4.90. And, people are even saying that Yiheng could get a faster 3x3 average. Like, I think if 3.91 is the fastest it ever gets, that's already, like, ludicrous. So it doesn't need to go further. But there could be a day when this reaches 5 again. And it'll be the first time the ratio is 5-1 since August 2007. That's pretty crazy. But yeah, what I was going to say is like, you might have noticed that I said we're comparing early 2019 to early 2025. Why didn't I just say, and now? Well, that's because, as I've said, Timon got a 4x4 average world record in February, and it was only a like 0.21 second drop. So 19.38 to 19.17, which isn't much for 4x4. But in order for 3x3 to keep up and have the same drop, a 0.21 is like huge for 3x3. So as of now, even though Yiheng managed to push the 3x3 average further down by another 0.14, 4x4, the average drop is just bigger numerically, even though percentage-wise it's still much, much smaller. 9% versus 32%. So, when I was sort of like fishing for the dates to pick for this, I was trying to find ones where 4x4 had dropped the least and 3x3 had dropped the most, and it just happened to be that these dates, January 2019 and 2025 just worked the best for that. But I think, as time goes on, I do feel like this 19.17 average probably has like a lot more further to drop than 3.91, just because, there's been so little movement in the 4x4 average in the last 7 years. Like, yeah, I just wonder if the kind of, if there are more coaches that really start focusing and grinding at 4x4, really optimizing every finger trick, it just feels like there's a lot more room to drop. Whereas 3.91, it just feels like we're getting so close to just the pure optimal 3x3 solving. And I know everyone always says that, and then a few years pass, and then like they look like fools because then it did drop by a huge another amount. But I think just objectively, if you look at the two events, like 4x4 just has more unconquered potential. But yeah, I think that like this graph is really interesting because, we know about the world records, but we never, like, not often do we like look at the ratios and graph it over time, and it just looks interesting. It's like a U shape, and yeah, we might see it hit 5 again. It was as high as 5.88 in 2004, because I guess at that point, well, okay, it's off the charts here, literally. But in 2004, the record was, what was it? Here. 15.38 for 3x3, which I am assuming is Shotaro Makasumi. And the 4x4 average is still 1 minute and 30 seconds. Like, That's almost 6 times slower. So I guess yeah, like at that time, like the Rubik's brand 4x4 was just so bad that like I don't blame them for not being able to turn very fast, but like 15 seconds to 130, that's crazy. Like that ratio is just like way up there. So I'm glad it was brought down. But yeah, 3.64 is so low, and then 4.8, 4.9, yeah. So yeah, I just wanted to make this video just to point out this kind of crazy coincidence that yeah, the drops were exactly the same down to the hundredth of a second. The most minute that we do measure it, 1.75. Yeah, so I guess we'll see what happens next. Uh, yeah, thank you for watching this very rambly cubing video. I don't know if there are many people who like care about this stuff, but like I love cubing, and I feel like the database side of things is like doubly my thing because I'm also into like data visualization. Although I haven't made those videos for a while, like I guess I've gotten busy with BFDI stuff. It's just so much. But yeah, thank you for watching. Like, let me know your thoughts. Like, what do you think about this? Like, why do you think 3x3 it seems to be improving faster and more substantially than 4x4? Like, what is going on with 4x4? Maybe it's the introduction of the ZB method becoming mainstream with Timon and Xuan Yigang, and there isn't as much, like, saving the zero point 0.5 seconds of not having to do PLL doesn't really matter so much for 4x4 as it does for 3x3. Maybe it's that. Maybe like it's the 3x3 improvements are because of ZB, but that doesn't make sense because Yiheng Wang is the one with the record and he doesn't do ZB, he does CFOP. So yeah, there's a lot of like interesting things to kind of think about. So yeah, let me know in the comments, and thank you for watching. Bye!